Intel, the company that pioneered the semiconductor industry, that laid the foundation for the personal computer revolution and fueled the rise of Silicon Valley, and the company that dominated the global semiconductor business for decades, is now falling into irrelevance. And when Qualcomm reportedly attempted to acquire Intel, it's one of the most humiliating moments a company like Intel had to face in the corporate history of the United States. Intel's entire market cap is now smaller than the personal net worth of one man, Jensen Huang, the founder of Nvidia, a company now valued at a staggering $2.7 trillion. Today, there are 15 chip companies with a higher valuation than Intel. So from being the leading company to falling behind 15 companies in market cap, that is the decline we are talking about. In this video, we'll see why this happened and also why this is not the end of Intel. Because many people are literally writing the obituary of Intel, we'll see why that is not the case. First, we have to have some basics. In devices like mobile phones, computers, laptops and servers, the processor is like the brain. You may already know that. So without the processor, any of these devices don't work. And the processor is made of silicon, a material which by its nature conducts electricity partially, hence the name semiconductor. And a highly sophisticated process has to take place to turn the raw silicon into a powerful processor. Within the processor, the most important part is what is known as a transistor. Each processor contains countless invisible transistors, like billions of transistors. A transistor is like an electronic switch that can turn on and off. These transistors are forged into a thin silicon wafer with a process known as photolithography. And the more transistors there are in a given processor, the faster and more efficient it becomes. So more number of transistors is equal to more speed and efficiency of a processor. But to forge more transistors into a tiny processor, the size of each transistor has to be decreased. The smaller the size of each transistor, the more the quantity we can put into a processor. So reducing the size of a transistor is the ultimate target, so that the processor becomes faster and more efficient. And if your processors are faster and more efficient, customers prefer your products and your business grows. So this is one fundamental part of any semiconductor business. Remember this point, we'll get to this later. The second thing we have to understand in a semiconductor business is there are two types of companies: fabless companies and foundry companies. Fabless companies are companies like Qualcomm, Nvidia, AMD and Apple. These companies design the chips, but they don't manufacture them. On the other hand, foundry companies are manufacturing companies. They take the designs of fabless companies and manufacture them. The best example for this is TSMC. But Intel is a company that does both, designing the chips and manufacturing them. Now designers are the ones who create how the processor works, what kind of tasks it can perform and how it performs them. They design how billions of transistors should behave. And this is crucial because the power of a processor depends on how billions of transistors in them operate together. The designing companies like AMD or Nvidia create the digital blueprint of how the processor works. And then the blueprint is sent to the manufacturing company like TSMC. They are the ones who physically create the processor as per the blueprint. And more importantly, they are the ones who have to reduce the size of the transistor. So reducing the size of the transistor is completely the responsibility of manufacturers, not designers. Designers' role is to design how the transistors operate together. Now we understand two things: that the size and design of the transistors and how billions of transistors operate together decide how powerful, faster and more efficient a processor will be. And second, there are two types of semiconductor companies: designers or fabless companies and manufacturers or foundry companies. And we know Intel as a company does both. It designs its own chips and it manufactures them. Now by far the fundamental reason for Intel's decline is Intel's failure to improve both its design and manufacturing capabilities. First, Intel failed to bring significant improvements in designing the chip architecture. And AMD delivered a powerful blow to Intel by introducing Ryzen processors with massive improvements in the design architecture. And Intel didn't catch up fast. Second, until 2014, Intel was faster than its manufacturing rivals in reducing the size of the transistors in its processors. Intel introduced 14nm transistor chips in 2014, whereas TSMC, the main rival of Intel in manufacturing, introduced 14nm chips in 2015. So Intel was ahead. But after 2014, from 14nm to smaller transistor chips, Intel lagged behind TSMC. Intel planned to bring 10nm chips in 2016, but it got delayed until 2019. But TSMC brought 10nm chips in 2017 itself. And TSMC brought 7nm chips in 2018 itself, whereas Intel brought them in 2023. TSMC introduced 3nm chips in December 2022, whereas Intel brought them in 2024. You can clearly see after 2014, TSMC beat Intel in producing smaller transistor chips. And since AMD chips are manufactured by TSMC, AMD processors started becoming better than Intel because of AMD's better design and TSMC's better manufacturing. And when AMD processors became better, Intel started losing market share, especially since 2017, the year when AMD released Ryzen processors. And another major blow to the decline of Intel is Apple dropping Intel processors in Mac PCs from 2020. That's another major blow. From then on, Apple started designing their own chips and outsourced manufacturing to TSMC. So that has hit Intel's revenue and profits. And now the race is for introducing 2 nanometer chips. We have to see who does it faster. The second biggest reason for the decline of Intel is the obsession with its goldmine, that is the CPU market, where Intel has dominated and generated huge revenue and profits for decades. Since Intel is making a lot of money in the CPU market, it was reluctant to enter other domains where the margins were low. The entire focus on defending the CPU goldmine. Because of this reason, they stayed away from entering the mobile processor industry, and they didn't anticipate smartphones would become such a big phenomenon. In 2007, when the iPhone was launched, Apple approached Intel to make chips for the iPhone. But Intel declined because at that time they thought the revenue and profit potential for the smartphone industry is not enough. And this proved to be a monumental blunder. As we know, the smartphone as a phenomenon has changed the world forever. Losing such a pivotal industry will have consequences, and Intel had to face it. Today, mobile chip companies like MediaTek and Qualcomm are making billions in profits. Intel tried to enter the mobile chip business later, but that was half-hearted and Intel didn't succeed there. Because of the same focus on the CPU market and obsession with profits, Intel was reluctant to focus on GPUs, graphics processing units, which are chips that are required for running heavy applications like gaming and now artificial intelligence. Since gaming was not a big market then, they thought it won't give them enough revenue and profits. And now, especially after the release of ChatGPT, the GPU market became gigantic overnight. And that is the reason Nvidia is now the most profitable company in the semiconductor industry. Intel didn't anticipate this AI trend and hence lagged behind here too. Since Nvidia was initially making GPUs for gaming, they had the background and head start to capture the GPU goldmine after the release of ChatGPT. So these are the fundamental reasons for the decline of Intel. But now we'll see why Intel is not dead. Even today, Intel is the biggest player in the overall CPU market, with a market share of 75% and AMD having a market share of 24%. Of course, AMD's market share is increasing year on year and Intel's market share is decreasing, but still Intel's position is solid. This is one reason why Intel is not dead yet. The second reason is Intel is too big to die overnight. It has massive assets in its balance sheet and it receives massive cash flows every year. It still generates over $50 billion in revenue, although it has decreased over the years. So Intel going bankrupt is quite impossible. It has a massive workforce, it has talented engineers, and more importantly, it has massive connections with the industry and governments. Even in the recently announced first quarter results of 2025, Intel's revenue is slightly higher than expected. So clearly, they are not dying. And Intel is taking massive decisions to cut costs, which will strengthen their profit margins and balance sheets even more. In 2024, Intel released new processors like Lunar Lake for laptops and Arrow Lake for desktops. These are designed to improve efficiency and AI performance. So clearly, a focus on innovation is back. The next reason why Intel is not dead is their IDM 2.0 strategy introduced by the former CEO Pat Gelsinger. This is a long-term strategy that aims to shift its focus heavily into manufacturing. Until now, Intel doesn't manufacture the chips designed by other companies like AMD. So most of the companies rely on TSMC, and this helped TSMC make massive revenue and profits. But now under IDM 2.0, Intel will start manufacturing chips for other companies also. So it will be competing with TSMC directly. And Intel is heavily investing in building new manufacturing facilities for this reason. And another big thing here is Intel is receiving massive US government funding under the CHIPS Act of 2022. So Intel has the backing of the US government to some extent. So the US government wants Intel to win because they don't want the companies of other countries like TSMC of Taiwan to be dominating the semiconductor industry. And the final reason why Intel has hope is the new CEO of Intel, Lip-Bu Tan. He seems to be a promising bet. He had a successful track record of running Cadence from 2009 to 2021. Cadence is also a successful semiconductor company. So he has the background to run Intel. And he also founded Walden International, a venture capital firm, which has now $5 billion in assets under management. So he also has the business background. He has a bachelor's degree in physics and a master's degree in nuclear engineering from MIT. Hence, he also has the engineering credentials, that too from an institute like MIT. And he also has been a board member of Intel from 2022. So he understands Intel as a company for quite a few years. You can see he is ticking many crucial boxes. Under his leadership, Intel is prioritizing client computing, which is already its stronghold, and artificial intelligence, where Intel lagged behind, and is committing strongly to build a great foundry business, that is the manufacturing business, where it will start making chips for other companies also, competing directly with TSMC. Even if Intel starts eating into the manufacturing market share of TSMC, Intel's revenue and profits will increase. So whether or not he is going to bring the lost glory of Intel, it seems at least he will save it from death. Hence, the decline of Intel offers a powerful lesson for the entire business world. To keep growing, companies must embrace change, relentlessly innovate, and adapt to emerging technologies, rather than clinging to what once worked or is currently working. So this is the analysis of the Intel's decline and why it is not completely dead. Thanks for watching Business and Billionaires. This is Deepak Lead signing off.